welcome to the DevReady podcast where we're helping non-techs build great tech. Today we've got a little bit of a different take. We're joined by Craig Johns. He's also a podcaster himself, 200 plus episodes on the Inspiring Great Leaders podcast, so go check that out. He's also been involved in high performance coaching in sport in different areas, and high performance is one of the key facets I'd like to dig in today across not just sport but corporate, in early stage startup, people that are driving new initiatives in industry or anything they're trying to achieve in the space of new products. Craig has a number of other areas in terms of coaching and performance in corporate as well, and a number of different businesses he's running, but I'll let him dig into that. But Craig, thank you for joining us. Really appreciate your time.
It's a real pleasure, Andrew. Looking forward to giving some insights to your listeners.
Thank you. Now, first and foremost, love to talk about who you are. Tell us a bit about your background and where you are today and how you got there, really.
Yeah, good. Look, I grew up on a little farm in New Zealand. The nearest neighbour was a mile away. The school I went to had 28 children when I first arrived as a 5-year-old, and when I left as an 11-year-old with 1 year to go of primary school, there were only 7 children left. So I learned, for me, I love that component, because you had to, as a kid, you were actually naturally leading up, leading down, leading sideways, because we all had to help each other out. And we had to, sometimes you'd be accelerated in a certain subject, other times you were helping someone else. Or when came to sport, you were playing with kids that were more than double your age. And so a really good grounding, and I love that aspect. But I think growing up on a farm, you learnt what hard work was all about. You learnt about resilience and determination and grit, dealing with being on your own quite a lot as well, which I think really helped later on in life when it came to being a CEO, also owning businesses and being an athlete, because, when it comes down to it, you're the one who's got to deliver, and there's not always someone around that can support you. So you've got to be able to take that initiative and be comfortable in your own skin and deal with the voice that's inside your head, so to speak.
That noise that's always going on, right?
Yeah. And so you've got to be comfortable with that. And I think that grounding of living on a farm, being a bit isolated in a way, and, just being able to entertain and educate yourself and deal with those challenges, I think was a really valuable sort of start to life. But I was very fortunate. My family got me into sport, or I found my way into sport from a very young age. I started swimming when I was 3. I was, I suppose, training competitively from the ages of 7. I think my first field hockey game was 4.5 years, because Dad was coaching and I was tagging along, and I was like, look, let me on the field. I don't think they could stop me from getting on the field. So they thought, we'll chuck a shirt on you and you can be officially part of the game. I'm not sure I really helped at that point. And look, just threw myself at whatever I could when it came to sports. And both my grandparents were really good representative coaches in field hockey and cricket. So Dad's side were field hockey, Mum's side were all cricket, and were very good at what they did, and were exceptional coaches who had very little education in it, but kind of learnt on the go and just had a natural instinct for it as well. So that, kind of set me up. I played every sport under the sun you could think of, and then I started to have some heart problems. So at the age of 15, I flatlined for the very first time. Spent time in hospital and was told to give up sport. And me being determined and I suppose relentless in a way, I was like, well, unless you can tell me I'm going to die, I'm going to find a way. And within 1 year, I represented New Zealand in field hockey and also in triathlon, so 2 New Zealand representative teams. And, no matter when the heart played up again, which it did on multiple occasions, and I was just, look, I'm happy to be alive today, so I'm going to do whatever I can, because I don't want to miss a minute.
That's a fascinating story to step into that, right? So being in the face of that adversity, really, and still stepping into it. What drove you to step into it? Was it just the love of the sport and just had to go back? And what was it for you?
Yeah, look, very passionate about sport, very passionate about competing and winning, getting better every single day. I was, love that process, especially being a swimmer early on as well. Everything's against the clock. You're racing yourself, you're racing the people next to you, you're always trying to get better, and the clock never lies. And so it was a great way for me who just loved that sense of improving. But also at the age of 12, I asked this question and it stuck with me for a very, very long time. And it's what drives me every single day is why aren't people healthier, happier, and hungrier for success? I'd find people that are healthy, but they're not happy. I could find people that are healthy, but they're not hungry to do anything. Or I might find someone who's really happy, but they're not driven to do anything. Or you can see someone who's really, really talented and gifted. And look, I bet I was never the most talented sport athlete at all, but I was more driven than anyone else, and I was hungry, and I love what I do, and I made sure I was really healthy. And so that question's kind of sat with me, and it doesn't matter what role I've been in, that has been the underlying purpose to everything I've done. And it's probably the reason why I love all the work I've always done, and the reason I I feel energized every single day. You can give me COVID, and I still feel energized to kick on and do things.
Let's unpack that a little bit. Healthy, happy, and hungry for success. What do you find when working in the spaces that you've worked in? Obviously, high performance coaching. You can have, like you said, the most talented person may not be hungry for success, but the most hungry person can go miles past them in terms of their ability and their performance on the day or in their performance in a career. What do you find really drives people when you go into the space of coaching? What drives people to have that hungriness that's deep inside them?
Deep down, everyone wants to learn. Everyone wants to learn. The challenge is when people are naturally good at something, people tell them they're amazing, they tell them they're great, you're doing awesome, you're wonderful, you're incredible, you're phenomenal, and they start listening to it. They get comfortable, they do, and they get complacent, and complacency kills. We know that. So it's a bit of a challenge, So we want to cheer people on, we want them to do really well, but deep down, everyone wants to learn. And so the only way people will learn is you've got to make them a little uncomfortable. You've also got to give them feedback that realizes that they're not there yet. They can do better. And so we see this quite often at school, with parents. And look, they're trying to do their best and they're trying to make them feel good. And when someone is doing something well, you want to cheer them on. But that's not where growth happens. Growth happens when people are uncomfortable, when they realize they've got more work to do, that they realize that they've got this talent, but it's not been maximized yet. And there's so many ways to do that. And so once you understand that, it's easy to make someone hungry for success when you know how to push those buttons in the right way.
Let's dig in on that. You said it's easier to do that. So I find it fascinating because even in my day-to-day, I've been in a business for 16 years. It's been evolving. There's many of them happening at the moment. It's not just one, but like similar to yourself, there's a couple of things that are occurring. But then you can hit marks where you get complacency, but then you got to reset and find drive again. And sometimes you get stuck in your own head. How do you bring that out of someone to continuously go at it day after day, year after year?
If you look at someone in business, let's say someone's in corporate. We'll start with corporate first. Okay. Asking a question, are you okay with people talking over top of you and you missing out on opportunities and work? Right? Say you're a coach and you're a leadership coach or something like that. Are you okay with working one-to-one when there's a lot more opportunity to make an impact and make money with one-to-many? If we look at, say, an athlete, are you okay with just winning your regional titles when you could win a national title? So it's asking those questions that are quite specific that goes, you know what? No, I'm actually not happy with that. But everyone else is telling them, yeah, you're great, you're amazing, you've done it, yeah, you're awesome. But you just need someone who can ask those questions. And then you can ask them, how would it feel? How would it feel if you could coach one to many and make a bigger impact and earn more money? How would it feel if no one talked over top of you and you could speak for yourself and people really stood up and listened to you and opportunities came from that? How would it feel? So you can see where I'm going here.
I get it.
It's sparking those questions.
Into the future
those
state
type
as well.
of questions that you've got to create agitation internally. There's a lot of people out there who can create agitation back towards them. So we can agitate someone, but it's back towards them or about someone else. But when you can truly deeply agitate someone internally and they can feel it comes from a really kind, caring, heartfelt place, far out. It's amazing what people can do. And you've got to be there to support them, because if you are going to agitate them internally, mate, they're going to have a bit of a struggle for a while, and you've got to be there to support them during the struggle, not to wrap them up on cotton wool, but to support them and encourage them to say, look, you've got this, and we all know that when we make a change, because when you agitate someone internally, you're literally cutting the wires in the brain a little bit, because they're used to doing something. They've been doing something for a long time.
They're comfortable doing something a particular way.
They're comfortable, right? So we've got to break that wiring. And when you rebuild wiring, sometimes you'll go up and then you might come down. You go up and then you might come down. So it's a bit of a roller coaster when you do get someone to make that shift. But you've got to figure out what buttons to push and to ask those questions that will agitate someone internally. And it's all contextualized as well. That's if you want someone to continue to drive forward versus someone who just goes through the motions.
Yeah, it's a fascinating piece. And you see that in the context of people building technology and trying to do new things. I'm involved in startup, scale up, corporates, all facets of it. And I find it quite fascinating as to some of the people that just go to the well a little bit and find a bit of a pushback, and then they're off back to their normal job. So I find it fascinating. How do we build resilience when we know that there's comfort on the other side? Sometimes people say you got to burn the boats and let it go, but how do you build resilience when you know that you're sort of stuck in your old ways? And I find that fascinating. Some people can and some people can't.
Look, I've not seen a successful person who's done it on their own. You've got to have the right people around you. You've got to have your mentors, your coaches. You got to have those people that can have your back when you're against the wall, but you've also got to have those people that will give you the encouragement and that ability to agitate you. If your mentors and coaches aren't agitating you internally, then they're the wrong people for you. They're the wrong people for you, unfortunately. And so you've got to have those right people that surround you. And they do need to make you feel a little bit angry, but it's not an anger against them. It's not an agitation against them. It's an agitation, anger with yourself, because you know what? I've got more. I can do better than this. And so you've got to be able to create that. Now, a great thing you just brought up there around, we have this great vision or this dream and we drive, or we start to go down, then we get close to going across the line to really go where we need to go to really make that push, and then we back off. So I'm going to share something around high performance, because in most cases, we've had a big sort of boom around this high performance thing. Everyone's talking about high performance. This is high performance, that's high performance. And what most people share is just the fundamentals for being performing or having a performing team, but not high performance. So let's take a look.
Definition of high performance first. Let's talk about that, because everyone's probably got a different definition. What's your definition of high performance?
Yeah, well, performance, let's look at performance first, right? So if we're performing at a level that's really good. But high performing is that ability to go above and beyond. If we look at, let's say Formula One right now. I'm not sure if you're into cars, but Formula One.
I'm not into cars at all, but let's go there.
Yeah, all right. So let's talk about Formula One. You've got literally the 24 or let's say 20 hottest drivers in the world right now. Now, they've got high performance cars. Some of them are not high performance cars because they're struggling a little bit, but in general, they're high performance cars. Now, you've got some amazing athletes there, but when I watch them drive, throughout a season, there's probably only a few that are really at high performance level. The rest are good. They perform well, but they don't have that ability to change the game. They don't have that ability to, and that's a key thing here. So change the game is really critical. If you're not willing to change the game in whatever pursuit you're doing, then you're unlikely to be pushing into a high performance zone.
Okay.
All right, so you'll be willing to change. Now, so let's have a look. The All Blacks, so rugby. So All Blacks rugby, the most winningest team ever in sport. Their winning percentage on average is around just under 80%, so around 78%. To give you an idea, the nearest sort of teams are like Manchester United, which are about 58%. So it gives you an idea of the league.
It's a crazy,
where they
difference.
sit. It's
Yes.
incredible. And when we look at the All Blacks, their longest winning streak is only 23 games.
Only, but it's a lot still. It doesn't
Right?
sound like much.
Extremely difficult to sustain high performance level where you're ahead of the game all the time. Now, the reason why they have been so successful, it's a country of only 5 million people against some really big countries, is that they have always been focused on being 5 years ahead. They're like, how is the game going to look in 5 years' time? Now, the last couple of years, they probably haven't done that very well, and so other teams have got ahead of them. But when they were in that focus, they were winning all the time. Now, I was very fortunate to be part of New Zealand's most winningest sports teams. It was a Stratford Premier men's hockey team, and the record may even be a world record. I don't know. We haven't been able to find any other team that has been able to achieve this level. And we went 272 games unbeaten.
Wow.
It's 16 years straight. In fact, they only lost one game in 21 years. Now, to give you a bit of context, I said I lived on a farm with the nearest neighbour a mile away.
Yeah, wow.
The Stratford only had 5,000 people. Now, we would beat teams of cities of over 100,000. They even combined, like the biggest city combined 3 clubs together to try and beat us. Never did.
Wow.
Until right at the end when they finally got us. And I
16 years is a whole long streak. That's
it's incredible, right? So I never lost a game for that team. And then they went on to win, I was there for the first 5 years of their 16 years. So something that's unique inside of there, and I'll come back to you, were talking about having kind of a vision, a dream, a goal they're chasing. What performing teams and companies have is a vision. Have a really strong vision, but they don't have a minimum standard that is acceptable. And so when we look at teams like the Stratford men's team, or we look at the All Blacks, and it's very consistent, we can see this in some of the most high-performing corporate teams as well, is that they have a vision, they have kind of a couple of components to it. So they have the big, hairy, audacious goal. Now, there's 2 parts to that part. There's the positive side. So it must have positive, there must be a positive performance angle to it so that you can feel driven towards that. You can measure it as well. But they also have
vision or big, hairy, audacious goal.
Which is the vision in a way. Like it's
Yeah,
a
okay.
similar thing, right? So we think it's just giving people a bit of context there. So think about the big vision, what is that big vision, the big dream? But they also have a negative vision to it, right? And so negative is maybe not the right word, but it's the term that was sort of put in there when the research was done by the All Blacks, or one of the All Blacks, David Kirk. He was their first World Cup winning captain back in 1987. He did some work with McKinsey. And they talked about the negative vision. Now, what that is the minimum standard the team will accept. Now, if you only have the positive vision, what happens is when things get a little challenging, it's really easy to sit back into what we've always done.
Okay,
It's very easy to slip down into the standard of comfortable complacency again. So having that negative vision means what is the acceptable standard? Now, for our team and the Stratford men's team, our minimum accepted standard was a draw. That was minimum. You didn't lose. Like there was no losses. Like we weren't going to accept 30% losses. No, our minimum standard was a draw. And even then we were pissed off. for us. And there were times where we only just got that draw in the last minute of game, I can tell you too. But we knew how to fight for that. And so we had that component, but you also need to, I think every individual needs to know what is their, so the third component is what the individual needs to know, what is their contribution to that vision, and what are they getting out of that collective vision for themselves. So we need to look after both self-worth and collective worth when it comes to the vision. So if we don't connect our individuals in that company, in that team to the vision, and they don't feel a connection to that helping their own vision, then they're not going to be determined and they're not going to show up every single day. So you've got to be able to find that. But that negative vision is the real key point that people miss. And when you've got that and you've anchored that in and everyone knows it and can hold you accountable, you don't let standards slip.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I've never heard about a negative vision in my mind. Yeah, that's the first time I've heard that philosophy. I think the buy-in to the vision, I've heard that in certain realms. How do we get people to buy in and actually own a vision and not just put it on a wall and walk past it and everyone just forgets about it, just goes about their day to day. But yeah, the negative vision side, is that framed into the vision itself, or is that a different piece that you see? Just
Look, you don't write it into the vision, but when you're creating it, or when you're reassessing the vision or the strategy every sort of 3 or 4 years, or whenever that may be, then as a collective, you need to then come together and go, okay, what's our minimum standard? What is it that we are all agreement on that we don't drop below? What does that look like? And so it's not going to be written into your vision, but it's going to be something that you have created together. Now, this helps because what happens, right? If you've got a startup company and you're at a point where you're scaling up and you bring everyone together and go, all right, time for a new vision. Everyone that was there at that time gets input and feels like they've had some level of interaction in regards to creating that vision. They'll buy in. Like, it's easy for them to buy in. So the ways to get new people coming in is to make sure that, when you do is that you sit down with them and go, okay, here's our vision. What's your vision? How can we help support yours through this vision? And so if there's no match, then it's probably not going to last. But also revisiting that minimum standard every couple of years also helps to bring that buy-in to the big vision as well. So I think that helps. The other thing is making it simple. I think many visions and missions are very, they're too long, they're too abstract.
Yes.
You can't remember them. For us at Speakers Institute Corporate, if we even look at our vision, right, to be the global leader in corporate training. Really simple, easy to catch. Now, our mission, even easier, to inspire great leaders. That's a mission.
Got it.
And our tagline is inspiring great leaders. Really, really easy to remember. And so it may not fit the standard, what people say, this is how your mission should look. It may not quite fit that. However, if you can't remember it, it's a waste of time anyway.
Yeah, if no one's buying into it or even understands it. I think one of I learned this from, I would say, a business partner in some capacity in some different areas, but from a vision perspective, and even across standards, one thing that they've taught me is similar in sort of performance coaching and training was you need to understand what a vision or that means to the other person on the other end. Yes, you might say that this is the vision, but what does it mean to them? What is the buy-in for them, and how do they perceive it, so they can actually attach to it, not just this is the vision. So I found that interesting. How do we align people to a vision? And it's probably getting their meaning behind what it actually is rather than just what you're pushing down to them. So that's something I've learned on the rest of the journey has been quite helpful in our business.
Yeah, really important, I think. And the biggest thing is being able to visualize. Can you paint a picture in the mind of that person? Can they actually see what it looks like? Because if it's abstract, they're not going to be able to see it. And if you think about change, right? So a vision is change, like we're changing the way we do things to achieve something. That's the direction we're going. It's part of the change. It's the vision of what the future looks like. So if we think about athletes that are going to the Olympics, so if we've got Michael Phelps when he was 7 years old, he did not visualize being a doctor. He did not visualize sweeping the streets. He did not visualize, being the clown in the circus. He did not visualize working at KPMG or Google. He visualized standing on that podium with a gold medal around his neck at the Olympic Games. Now, he went on to get 28 medals, I think it was, and 22 or 23 gold medals, eight out of 8 in one Olympic Games. I think it was 2008.
It was amazing, that particular year.
Yeah, but he could visualize that. So when we think about, if we come back to the basics, as leaders, we are change managers. All leaders are change managers. All CEOs are change managers. And to be quite honest, pretty much every single person in this world is a change manager. I've got to influence my 21-month baby girl. So every day I'm influencing change. So there's lots of things out there that'll tell you this is what creates great change and this will make it successful. But in the end, it comes down to 3 basic things. If you don't have these, it's not going to happen. 1, urgency of change. So if we think about our vision or a goal, or we're selling something to someone, or we're trying to get someone to think differently, what is the urgency? Because if we can't see any urgency, we'll go, oh, great idea, but we're just going to keep doing what we're doing. Yeah, this is good.
It's easier to keep doing what you're doing if there's no urgency, I agree.
Oh, yeah, it's comfortable.
It's like a major problem smashes you, or a challenge right in the face, and you walk straight into it. Urgency's right there because you have to move.
Yeah.
But creating urgency sometimes can be a little bit difficult for people. It's like, if I've got a vision out there, how do I drive urgency when I know there is none? So that's a kicker.
But you've got to create it, because if there's no urgency to do it today, then they'll go, okay, I'll wait till next week. I'll wait till next month. And they don't do it, right?
So years go by.
Years go by. So you've got to get people to be able to create that sense of urgency, build that case around the problem, the pain point we're solving, even think about the opportunity in the future. And if there's an opportunity, there's always a problem or a pain point associated with it. There always will be. Because there's an opportunity. If we don't do it now, we're going to be left behind because other businesses will take that opportunity. If you think about it from a startup.
Yep.
So that'll be a problem, because you're not going to have business in 3 years' time because everyone else has moved ahead, and so have consumers, and especially in tech startups, far out. The game's changing all the time. You've got to be evolving all the time. Yeah. All right, so you got sense urgency of change, number 1. Number 2, clarity of change. If it's not clear, if it's not specific and easy to understand, people are not going to change. It's got to be really, really clear. And if we think about the most influential, inspirational leaders of all time, they're really easy to understand. They speak in a language of a 8 to 12-year-old. Like, it's easy, right? And so what happens in life is we try and add all these extra words. We make things complex. We try and add technical words to think we're intelligent, when in fact we're not. And
if we're not clear and not understood, then there's a problem.
It creates a barrier in the mind, and human beings will give you grace for the first barrier, right? Like your first barrier, yeah, okay, I'm still here. Second barrier, they'll take a step back. Third barrier, they're gonna be already on their phone, or they're already gonna be thinking about what's next. They might be in the room or might be there, but they're not actually listening to you anymore. They've switched off. So that clarity of change. So that's number 2, and then the third one is visualize the change. If our job as leaders and influencers is to put a canvas inside the listener's head or our team's head and then become Picasso. And you need to paint this beautiful picture of what the future is going to look like. If people can't see it, they're not going to believe in it. And then they're definitely not going to follow it. And so that's why story is so important. The ability to tell stories really well, the ability to paint pictures quickly, in a way. So really powerful. And I think that's so critical. A lot of people talk about the importance of storytelling. Yep, it's really important. We've got to be doing storytelling.
Everyone does.
But why don't you do it? Why don't you do it?
Is there something you'd recommend for people that would go out there that are looking to learn around how to tell better stories? Are there certain things that you've picked up along the journey?
Yeah, it's like anything. If you don't practice it, you're going to be uncomfortable. If you don't practice it, you're going to be clumsy. So you've got to get some time practicing it. My recommendation too is to get a coach who can teach you how to do it as well. Because yes, we can read a book, That's a story, but it's not going to
Yeah.
make us someone who's good at telling stories. Now, some are very good naturally, but
Yes.
it's a teachable skill, and it is so critical, so critical. We wonder why, as parents, we have our 3-year-old kid come up to us and you can see they've done something wrong, and you explain to them, go about how to do it right, and they go, yeah, yeah, and they go away and do the same thing again. Why? Because you haven't visualized what it looks like. They don't know what it looks like. And adults are the same. We're no different. So those three things are really critical. If you don't have those, then you're really going to struggle when it comes to change. I mean, if you want to add a fourth bonus one in there, then you've got to tap into the emotions. And if you know how to tell a story well, you will know how to evoke emotion. And so part of the visualize the change, you also need to um, evoke emotion in the person to want to change as well. So it's probably the fourth bonus one, but there's no point doing that unless you got the first three right.
It's hard to drive emotion if there's nothing backing it up and behind it, so it becomes a bit difficult, doesn't it?
Yeah, correct.
Oh, brilliant. Craig, fascinating. Talk about your Inspiring Great Leaders podcast for a couple of minutes. Give a bit of a plug, and I'm sure there's quite a number of different stories on there, but why do you do it? What do you love about podcasting?
Yeah, good. Look, I've been podcasting now, I think, for 6 years. I think it's coming up six, maybe seventh year now. Had a couple of breaks in between where work got just overwhelming and I couldn't
That's
keep
okay.
up. So, the last 2 months I haven't been able to release them, even though I've got a whole lot backed up. So, finally back releasing them last week, which is really, really good. For me, it actually started out as the Active CEO podcast. But I found some of the people I wanted to interview were like, well, I'm not active. I don't belong on this podcast. So I decided to change the name and to Inspiring Great Leaders. And, so we have people from world champions, Olympic champions and coaches through to someone who's doing incredible not-for-profit work to people that might have, like there was I can't think of the guy's name, it's got on top of my head. But they had co-CEOs in a company, so I wanted to understand how co-CEOs worked. To coaches, thought leaders, consultants, small business owners. Really, I just want to unpack stories of people who do some incredible things but don't realize probably how amazing they are, and to bring those stories to life and to help educate people. And I suppose the byproduct of that is I get to learn every single day off incredible people that...
It's a fascinating piece, that learning. People don't get that, right? So the learning is the fascinating piece. So it's a half an hour of learning. So
There's incredible people I have unearthed from all around the world, and you realize that there's so much more to do in the world. And sometimes you think, look, I've lived a pretty good life, and then you hear someone else and go, man, you've had some ups and downs, but your life sounds pretty amazing too. I'd love to have a go at some of that. So I think, for me, it fuels me. I just love people coming alive when they talk about their journey and their lessons and, what they have understood in their life. And I think for everyone listening as well is to realize that we're all ordinary people, but every single one of us has done something extraordinary along the way. You probably just don't realize it sometimes. And so that ability to get to interact at a human level with people that sometimes may look like they're a closed shop or that might be too difficult to get a conversation with. And so for me, I find joy in just being able to open up those conversations to people who may not have the courage or confidence to go and ask someone like that to share some insights and some of their expertise.
Oh, brilliant, Craig. It's fascinating to hear from you and learn about your background, your history, high performance coaching, training, playing professional sport. There's a lot to unpack there. We could probably go for hours, but our podcast goes for about 30 minutes, so we'll probably cut it there. I'll share out your links to Inspiring Great Leaders. I think that's a great initiative, so people go have a listen to Craig and the interviews that he's doing, and there's plenty to learn, I'm sure, from someone like yourself and the experience that you had, but really good to unpack a couple of things and how we can drive high performance in the space of a family, a business, a startup, a corporate, whatever it might be, but distilling what that might mean. So thank you for coming on and sharing a bit of your experience, and probably just a top of the iceberg or that tip of the iceberg, but thank you for coming on today.
No, you're welcome. A real pleasure.
Thank you.